Detective Marcus Brennan had worn his badge for 17 years like it was a crown. In the precinct, his word was gospel. In the courtroom, his testimony was gold. He'd sent dozens of people away with nothing more than his confident smirk and a carefully crafted narrative that juries ate up every single time. The system wasn't just working for him, it was built for him, or so he thought. On a humid Tuesday morning in downtown Philadelphia, Brennan strutted into courtroom 6B with that same arrogance plastered across his face. He'd been through this routine so many times he could do it in his sleep. Show up, look sharp in his pressed uniform, nod respectfully at the judge, deliver his testimony with just the right mix of authority and concern, and watch another case slam shut like a bear trap. Today's case seemed even easier than usual. Some woman he'd arrested for assaulting an officer and resisting arrest. Open and shut. Or at least that's what he told himself as he settled into the witness stand, adjusting his tie with the casual confidence of a man who'd never lost. The defendant sat at the table across from him, her posture straight, her eyes calm. Sarah Mitchell didn't look like the wild, aggressive criminal Brennan had described in his report. She looked like someone's mother, someone's neighbor, someone who volunteered at the local library on weekends. But Brennan had learned a long time ago that appearances didn't matter in court. What mattered was the narrative, and he controlled the narrative. He'd written it himself in the arrest report, and now he just needed to sell it. The prosecutor, a young guy fresh out of law school who practically worshipped Brennan, led him through the testimony with softballs. Brennan recounted the evening of the arrest with theatrical precision. He described how he'd responded to a noise complaint, how Mitchell had been verbally aggressive and confrontational, how she'd lunged at him when he attempted to calm the situation, forcing him to restrain her for everyone's safety. His voice carried that rehearsed tone of reluctant authority, the good cop who'd been forced into a bad situation by an irrational citizen. "And you feared for your safety, detective?" the prosecutor asked, right on cue. Brennan nodded gravely. "I did. I've been doing this job for 17 years, and I know when someone's a threat." She was out of control. The prosecutor smiled, satisfied. "No further questions, Your Honor." That's when Sarah Mitchell's lawyer stood up. Brennan had barely glanced at the defense attorney before, assuming she'd be some overworked public defender going through the motions. But the woman who rose from her chair commanded the room in a way that made him sit up a little straighter. She was in her late 40s, her gray-streaked hair pulled back severely, her suit immaculate. She didn't carry a notepad. She didn't need one. "Detective Brennan," she began, her voice calm and measured, "you testified that my client lunged at you. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." Brennan kept his voice steady, confident. He'd handled aggressive cross-examinations before, and this happened outside her residence at approximately 8:30 p.m. on June 14th? "That's correct." The lawyer walked slowly toward the evidence table, her heels clicking against the courtroom floor. "Your body camera was activated during this encounter, wasn't it?" Brennan felt the first small crack in his armor. It malfunctioned. Technical issues. "Technical issues," she repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "How convenient. And your partner's body camera also malfunctioned." The words came out a bit too quickly. She raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "Not yet. Detective, you've been involved in 43 arrests over the past 3 years where the defendant was charged with assaulting an officer or resisting arrest, is that correct?" The prosecutor jumped up. "Objection, relevance." "Goes to credibility, Your Honor," the defense attorney replied smoothly. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes who'd seen every trick in the book, nodded. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, detective." Brennan shifted in his seat. "I work in a tough district. People resist arrest 43 times in 3 years. That's more than 1 per month." She paused, letting the jury absorb that. "And in how many of those cases did your body camera mysteriously malfunction?" "I don't recall the exact number." "I do. 27. More than half." She moved closer to the witness stand. "Detective, isn't it true that you deliberately disable your body camera when you intend to fabricate charges?" "Objection." The prosecutor was on his feet, his voice cracking with indignation. Sustained. Counsel, rephrase. But the damage was done. The jury was looking at Brennan differently now, their expressions shifting from trust to skepticism. The defense attorney continued, pulling out document after document. Cell phone records showing that neighbors had called 911 that night, reporting an officer harassing a woman, not a woman disturbing the peace. Medical records showing bruises on Sarah Mitchell's wrists consistent with excessive force, not defensive restraint. A security camera from across the street that Brennan hadn't known existed. Footage that showed him grabbing Mitchell without provocation, her hands never raised, her body language defensive, not aggressive. With each piece of evidence, Brennan's story crumbled. His confident smirk faded, his shoulders hunched. The narrative he'd crafted so carefully was being systematically demolished, and there was nothing he could do but watch it happen. "Detective Brennan," the lawyer said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the courtroom. "You didn't just make a mistake that night, did you? You deliberately arrested my client on false charges to cover up your own misconduct. Isn't that the truth?" Brennan looked at the judge, at the jury, at the prosecutor who couldn't meet his eyes. The walls were closing in, the badge that had protected him for 17 years suddenly felt like an anchor dragging him down. "No further questions," the defense attorney said, returning to her seat with the quiet satisfaction of someone who just demolished a house of cards. As Brennan stepped down from the witness stand, he finally understood what real accountability felt like. He'd brought the wrong woman to court, a woman with resources, with a lawyer who knew exactly how to dismantle corrupt cops, with evidence he didn't know existed. The system he thought he owned had just shown him who was really in charge. Justice, it turned out, didn't care about his badge after all. The courtroom felt different when Marcus Brennan walked back in 3 weeks later. The air seemed heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves were judging him. This time he wasn't here as the star witness. He was here as the accused. The internal affairs investigation had moved with surprising speed once Sarah Mitchell's case fell apart. Turns out, when one domino falls, the rest follow pretty damn quick. Within 48 hours of his testimony imploding, 3 other defendants whose cases he'd worked came forward with their lawyers, all claiming the same thing: falsified charges, disabled body cameras, coerced confessions. The local news picked it up, then the national networks. Suddenly, Detective Marcus Brennan wasn't just another cop with a stellar conviction record. He was the poster child for everything wrong with American policing. His union rep had told him to keep his head down, stay off social media, and let the lawyers handle it. But Brennan had never been good at taking advice. He'd spent 17 years calling the shots, and some part of him still couldn't accept that the game had changed. Even now, sitting at the defense table in a cheap suit because the department had suspended him without pay, he kept replaying that day in his head, wondering where exactly it all went wrong. Sarah Mitchell sat in the gallery 3 rows back. She didn't have to be there. The criminal charges against her had been dismissed with prejudice. She'd even filed a civil suit against the city that would probably net her a comfortable 6-figure settlement. But she showed up anyway, day after day, watching Brennan squirm. He'd made the mistake of making eye contact with her once. The look she gave him wasn't angry or vindictive. It was worse than that. It was disappointment, like she'd expected better from someone who'd sworn to protect and serve. The prosecutor assigned to his case was a stone-cold professional named Rebecca Torres. She had a reputation for going after dirty cops with the same enthusiasm most prosecutors reserve for gang leaders and drug kingpins. Brennan had worked with her years ago, back when they were on the same side. She'd been friendly then, even flirty at the department Christmas party. Now she looked at him like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. "Your Honor," Torres began, standing with a stack of files that seemed to grow thicker every time Brennan saw them. "The state intends to prove that Marcus Brennan, over a period of at least 5 years, systematically violated the civil rights of citizens, fabricated evidence, filed false reports, and corrupted the judicial process for personal gain and professional advancement." Brennan's lawyer, a tired-looking guy named Patterson, who specialized in defending cops, objected weakly. "These are serious allegations without substantial proof, Your Honor." Judge Helen Morrison, the same woman who'd presided over Sarah Mitchell's case, peered over her glasses. "I've read the preliminary evidence, Mr. Patterson. There seems to be plenty of proof, but that's what trials are for. Proceed, Ms. Torres." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Torres didn't go for the jugular right away. She built her case brick by brick, witness by witness, piece of evidence by piece of evidence. First came the technical expert who analyzed Brennan's body camera. Turns out there was no malfunction. The cameras had been manually disabled, and the expert could prove it from the device's internal logs. 17 different incidents where Brennan had switched off his camera just minutes before encounters that resulted in arrests for assaulting an officer. Then came the witnesses, defendants Brennan had arrested over the years. A college kid who'd been charged with resisting arrest after asking for Brennan's badge number. A homeless veteran who'd spent 6 months in jail because Brennan claimed he'd attacked him, when security footage later proved the vet had been sleeping on a bench. A single mother who'd lost custody of her kids after Brennan arrested her for public intoxication, even though the blood test showed she was completely sober. Each story was worse than the last. Each testimony chipped away at the image Brennan had carefully constructed over 17 years. The decorated detective, the hero cop, the guy who always got his man. It was all bullshit, and now everyone could see it. But the worst part came when Torres called Officer Jamie Rodriguez to the stand. Rodriguez had been Brennan's partner for 2 years. Young, idealistic, exactly the type of cop who joined the force because he actually wanted to help people. Brennan had mentored him, taken him under his wing, taught him the ropes. Or at least that's what Brennan had told himself. Now, watching Rodriguez walk to the witness stand, refusing to even glance in his direction, Brennan realized what he'd actually done. He'd corrupted him. "Officer Rodriguez," Torres said gently, "I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the court what you witnessed during your time as Detective Brennan's partner." Rodriguez's hands shook slightly as he gripped the edge of the witness box. His voice was quiet at first, almost apologetic. "I saw him turn off his body camera multiple times. He told me it was standard procedure, that it saved battery life. I was new, so I believed him." He paused, swallowing hard. "I watched him escalate situations that didn't need to be escalated. Someone would be mouthy or disrespectful, and instead of de-escalating like we were trained to do, he'd get physical. Then he'd charge them with assault or resisting. Did you ever participate in these incidents?" Rodriguez closed his eyes. "Twice. He told me that's how things worked on the street, that the academy didn't teach us the real rules. I went along with it because he was my training officer, because I trusted him." His voice cracked. "I've had to live with that every day since. 2 people went to jail because I backed up his lies. Brennan wanted to shout, to tell everyone that Rodriguez was exaggerating, that he was saving his own ass by throwing his partner under the bus. But Patterson had warned him, any outburst would only make things worse. So he sat there, silent, watching his former partner lay out every dirty secret." Torres moved to the evidence table and picked up a folder. The internal affairs investigation also uncovered something interesting in Detective Brennan's financial records. Over the past 5 years, his arrest record directly correlated with overtime payments. The more arrests he made, particularly high-profile arrests that led to convictions, the more overtime he was awarded. Isn't that right, Officer Rodriguez? Yes. He bragged about it sometimes, called it working smarter, not harder. He said if you knew how to play the system, you could boost your paycheck by 30–40%. There it was, the motive laid bare for everyone to see. Brennan hadn't been a dedicated detective fighting crime. He'd been a con artist in a uniform, gaming the system for money, padding his arrests with fabricated charges, and destroying lives because it padded his bank account. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks of testimony. Patterson's defense was weak, almost perfunctory. What could he say? The evidence was overwhelming. The witnesses were credible. Even the cops who'd initially stood by Brennan had slowly backed away as the full scope of his misconduct became clear. When the jury returned after just 4 hours of deliberation, Brennan knew it was over. He'd seen that look on jury 4 people before. Grim determination mixed with disgust. He'd just never seen it directed at someone on his side of the courtroom. Guilty on all counts. The words echoed through the courtroom. Sarah Mitchell, still sitting in the gallery, nodded once and stood to leave. She'd gotten what she came for. Not revenge. Justice. Real justice. The kind that didn't care about badges or brotherhood or the thin blue line. The kind that said nobody was above the law. As the bailiffs approached to take him into custody, Brennan finally understood the truth. His badge had never made him untouchable. It had just taken him this long to meet someone brave enough to touch him, and now he'd spend the next 10 to 15 years thinking about that mistake.